it goes on and on. And so what time do you have to leave to make it to where?
We have time, as long as we get to Quartzsite by evening, I think we'll be alright. Yeah. So, I mean, I know you'll want to eat lunch and take a nap before too long, so
Right.
I think we're happy to visit with you as long as.
Well, what I miss is, it just worked out with my life that I have a story to tell. And I haven't begun to tell you all the exciting parts. Robbers and do you want to hear some more?
Sure.
I remember you told us about the people looking for the white devils and you barely escaped. Yeah.
Yes, I do. Well, let me sit over there then.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm not being fresh. I'm just trying to I'm trying to maintain my balance.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think of which story to come up with. And we were in Wei, she and my sister and I studied every single day, and for 2 years. Latin. Imagine trying to study first and second year Latin on your own. My mother's sister, Ada, came to Weishi. My father had built a huge house for other missionaries to live in too with us, and she married my uncle then, and they decided they would come to Weishi, and so they came from England. My uncle was from England, and landed in Burma, and came up through Rangoon, and my father, I'm talking about when I was 2 months old, my father knew they didn't know the language and it would make it easier for them if he went to meet them, so he went to meet them, and the story of his, no bridges or anything, so somebody had to take the horses across, the horses that were loaded with their food and all of their things. So he said, oh yeah, he was a good swimmer. He grew up in London. He swam the River Thames and all that. He knew excellent. So he took the horses, and just before he got to the other, and he drowned. And so my Aunt Ada and Uncle Len came to Weishi and were living there too when my sister and I were there trying to study every morning. So they got together with my mother and my sister and with me for morning prayers every morning. And they kind of, like to sleep late. Well, I explained to my Aunt Ada that I was serious about studying, that school started at 9 o'clock, and that my sister and I met on the veranda, and we started at 9 o'clock. So anyway, they got up in time at 8 o'clock, and then it was 8:15, it was 8:30, when they would meet us downstairs in a room for morning prayers. And so one morning we went down and they weren't there, and finally they arrived at about 5 minutes before 9 for morning prayers, and we sang a hymn, and then we started morning prayers, and my Aunt Ada was praying for her dear nieces Catherine and Eleanor, and she was praying, and it was 9 o'clock, so I got up and poked my sister, and we went upstairs and started. Just when my Aunt Ada was just praying so mightily for us, and so of course they were terribly offended. but just that's if you're determined, and you do it anyway, or something. We visited some visitors, some missionaries, 5 days journey away in Lanping, and on our way, it took us 5 days to get there, and on our way home, we heard that there was a temple, and there were some people starving. They had quite a lot of starvation, and so we all decided, my mother, sister, and I, to go to this temple and kind of see what was going on. And there were all these people in the temple starving, dying. And there was this man and his wife and their little baby. And they asked if we could take the baby. And my sister said, yes, of course we will. Now, the parents died a few hours later, but she had this little baby. But it kind of does things for you. Actually, to see people die from starvation. Mm-hmm. And I am totally extreme, and Gavin will agree, about food, about wasting food, about throwing away food. And to me, food is a sacred gift. It's your life, And so anyway, there are things in one's life that are very... anyway, I won't go into finally finishing our studies. Traveling 10 days by horseback down to Dali, and then meeting robbers on the way, and it was a case of traveling all day, and then in this little village they said, oh well, you can stay with the chief of this town. And so he said, of course, come and stay. And so we put up our cots and we were sleeping, and we didn't have one for me. I was sleeping on top of a big grain bin. And right next to me was the roof, and in the middle of the night I looked, and there was blue sky, and somebody was coming down the roof, and all of that. And so I cleared my throat, which is what you do in China if a robber comes, and you let him know you're awake, and so he'll come later when you're asleep, So I cleared my throat all night long. And the next morning, although we locked the doors, they came into the room and they started stealing all kinds of things. So we hurried and took off, and my mother made the mistake, she's kind of outspoken, of accusing them. You're stealing our things. And this chief of the village had a fit. So we had traveled about an hour when we heard horses, and he and 2 other men had followed us and threatened us. And so they got off their horses and came and threatened us. And well, my mother had been kind of rainy, and she had an umbrella with her, so she got off her horse, and she just did the umbrella back and forth and started speaking in tongues, and she scared the hell out of them. They jumped on their horses and they ran for their lives. So anyway, I admired her for that. I never understood quite what happened, but so anyway, I'm going to stop there. But we did get down to Kunming, and the sirens didn't sound, and my sister and I had to run out of the city, and so anyway, I have a poem I wrote about that. It was horrible. The panic of people and fear and all of that. Getting to Hong Kong, getting on a boat with a whole bunch of refugees, falling in love with a young 16-year-old French young fellow whose parents were diplomats, and arriving in America with no idea of wanting to go to college, getting to meet people who knew my mother, and they checked and they found that I couldn't, even though I had a diploma, a high school diploma, I couldn't attend university because of a residence requirement. No resident, no, I couldn't go to any university in America because I didn't have a resident requirement. And hearing about this little college called Westmont College, and the adjustment and all that. Period. Anyway, so now what I want to hear about is how are things going with you?